The room glittered with chandeliers, the kind of light that made diamonds shine louder and laughter echo like polished glass. But for Daniel, a single father in his mid-30s, the glitter was nothing more than borrowed sparkle. He stood near the far wall of the hotel ballroom, adjusting the second-hand blazer he had pressed 3 times that afternoon, hoping the wrinkles would surrender. They hadn't. Still, he smiled. Tonight wasn't about blending in, it was about making his daughter proud. She had been invited to perform with her school's choir at this charity gala, and he wouldn't miss it for the world. Daniel wasn't the kind of man anyone would expect at such a place. He worked long shifts as a mechanic, often coming home with grease under his nails and exhaustion weighing heavy on his shoulders. Money was tight, every dollar he earned was stretched, bent, and begged to cover rent, food, and the little joys he tried to give his daughter, Lily. But he was here, surrounded by tuxedos and gowns, because love had a way of carrying him into rooms that his wallet couldn't afford. Across the room, hidden behind a flawless smile and a dress that shimmered like moonlight, stood Emily Carter. To everyone in attendance, she was the untouchable billionaire heiress, daughter of a global business magnate, owner of philanthropic foundations, whispered about like royalty. Cameras often found her, and headlines stitched her name into stories of power and wealth. Yet, inside, Emily was unraveling. For months, she had felt the crushing loneliness of being admired but not known, surrounded by people who cared for her name but not her soul. The pressure to maintain perfection had become a cage, and the weight of expectations left her suffocating. When the choir finished singing, applause thundered, and Daniel cheered louder than anyone, whistling in his off-key way that made his daughter giggle from the stage. His pride was louder than money, brighter than the chandeliers. After the performance, guests mingled, and Daniel, feeling both out of place and amused by it, tried to stay near the dessert table, where the cakes looked too delicate to eat. That was when fate decided to intervene. Emily, exhausted from smiling at shallow compliments, wandered away from the crowd and found herself near the same dessert table. Her eyes landed on the chocolate truffles, the one thing she secretly adored but often avoided, because someone always photographed her plate, judging every bite. Tonight, though, she reached for one, just as Daniel did. Their fingers brushed, and both pulled back awkwardly. "Sorry," Daniel chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "Didn't mean to steal the last piece of heaven." Emily blinked, surprised by the warmth in his voice. "It's fine," she said softly. "You can have it." "No way," Daniel shook his head, pushing the plate toward her. "I already ate 2 of those tiny—" "What do you call them?" "Cloud puffs. Cream bombs." "Whatever they were good enough to make me forget my rent is due." Emily laughed, an unguarded, real laugh that startled her as much as him. "They're cream puffs." "Ah, right. See? Fancy food has fancy names. Where I'm from, dessert is just cake. Chocolate cake if it's a birthday, and banana bread if the bananas went bad." Something about his honesty cracked through her polished exterior. She wasn't Emily the billionaire right now, she was just Emily, a woman laughing at a stranger's ridiculous take on desserts. "You're funny," she admitted, her smile reaching her eyes. Daniel shrugged. "Life's heavy enough. Gotta make people laugh when you can. Even if it's just about cake." That simple exchange lit a spark in her chest she hadn't felt in years. For a brief moment, she wasn't falling under the pressure of her empire, she was simply falling into laughter, into humanity. They drifted into conversation. Daniel talked about cars, about raising his daughter, about the absurdity of attending a party where even the napkins looked more expensive than his shoes. Emily listened, not out of politeness, but out of genuine interest. His words carried no agenda, no attempt to impress. He wasn't treating her like a prize or a headline, just like a person. And for someone who had been drowning in shallow admiration, that felt like oxygen. Hours passed, unnoticed. The music swelled, guests danced, and yet Emily found herself rooted in conversation with the poor dad who had unknowingly made her heart lighter. She didn't tell him who she was. She needed, just one night where her worth wasn't tied to billions. But reality has a way of reminding us who we are. As the evening wound down, Emily's assistant rushed over, whispering about urgent business. Daniel stepped back politely, assuming she needed to return to her important world. Before she left, she turned to him, her eyes lingering. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For reminding me how to laugh." He smiled, though confused. "Anytime." That night, Emily went home with her laughter replaying like a forgotten melody, while Daniel walked his daughter back to their small apartment, carrying leftover cake in a napkin for her breakfast. Two worlds had collided, and neither knew just how deeply that encounter would change them. Days later, Emily couldn't shake the memory of Daniel. She thought of his sincerity during board meetings, his laughter when she sat through charity luncheons, his stories when her calendar filled with endless obligations. She had met countless powerful men, yet it was the mechanic in a wrinkled blazer who haunted her heart. Meanwhile, Daniel's life carried on, long shifts, bills piling, and moments of joy carved out with Lily. He didn't expect to see Emily again. To him, she was just a stranger from a fancy party. But destiny doesn't like unfinished stories. A week later, while Daniel was fixing a car in his shop, a sleek black car pulled up. Emily stepped out, dressed simply this time, jeans and a sweater, no spotlight, no entourage. Daniel nearly dropped his wrench. "You again," he grinned, wiping his hands. "Careful. If you keep showing up around me, people might think we're friends." She laughed, and the sound filled the small shop with something brighter than any chandelier. Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing. From that moment, a quiet friendship blossomed. Emily visited often, finding excuses: her car needed checking, she had questions about engines, or sometimes no reason at all. They talked, they laughed, and Daniel noticed how she seemed lighter each time. He still didn't know her true identity. To him, she was just Emily, a kind woman who liked to listen. But Emily knew she was falling. Not into despair this time, but into love. She was terrified. How could she tell him who she really was? Would he look at her differently if he knew she carried billions in her name? Or worse, would he feel small in her presence? The truth unraveled one evening when Lily walked into the shop, carrying a school flyer about a fundraising event. Emily offered to help, suggesting a donation. When Daniel laughed, saying, "Unless you've got $1 billion lying around, we'll have to sell cookies," Emily froze. Her silence stretched, and he frowned. "Wait," he said slowly. "Don't tell me." Her eyes filled with fear. "Daniel, You're not just Emily, are you?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "I didn't mean to hide it. I just wanted to be seen as me, not my money." Daniel sat heavily, his heart pounding. For a moment, the weight of her world clashed with his. He thought of his bills, his struggles, the distance between their lives. But then he looked at her trembling hands, the way her eyes begged not for admiration but for acceptance. And in that moment, he realized the truth. "I don't care about your billions," he said softly. "I care about the Emily who laughs about cream puffs and listens to my silly stories. That's the woman I know." She broke into tears, the kind that release years of hidden pain. And as he reached out, pulling her into an embrace, she knew she had found something worth more than all the money in the world: genuine love, the kind that asked for nothing and gave everything. Their story became one of whispers in the city, how a poor mechanic and a billionaire heiress found each other not through wealth or status, but through laughter, kindness, and the courage to see beyond appearances. Emily used her resources to support Daniel and Lily, not as charity, but as a partner who believed in their dreams. Daniel, in turn, gave Emily something priceless: a safe place to be human, to laugh, to love without fear. And so, the billionaire who had been falling hard discovered that sometimes, the arms that catch you aren't gilded or grand, they're calloused, ordinary, and full of extraordinary love.